Nothing More are on a 2-album streak with 2 straight 10 out of 10s, but can this new album spirits hold up under all that pressure? Let's find out. Sonically speaking, there's a lot of anger and aggression on this album. It's a very present theme. Look no further than the opening track, Turn It Up Like Stand in the Fire. But there's also emotions and beauty on this album. One of my favorite tracks actually is Best Times, that has this incredible melancholy to it that only gets more intense at the end when they change key for the last iteration of the chorus, that then hits you so much harder. That's just an incredibly well done track. Valhalla is a song that kind of combines both of these extremes. We start out with this very beautiful and very emotional beginning and then suddenly go into the more aggressive style of the album. And I cannot stress enough how much this song, but the entirety of the album, benefits from the incredible vocal performance of Johnny Hawkins. He's got the highs, he's got the lows. Just look at Don't Look Back, where he sings, I want nothing to do with you, which really contradicts the verses where he can go low and he can start screaming, and this range is just incredibly well pulled off on this album overall. Johnny's an incredibly underrated vocalist, and I love the show that he puts on throughout the entirety of this project. The same can really be said for Mark and Daniel, backing him up throughout the entirety of the project and really elevating his vocals, while also nailing the guitar and bass work with some great riffs and the occasional kinda prog rocky guitar solo and some awesome breakdown work. Let's also not forget about the show that Ben puts on with some driving performances, some great fills, really a convincing performance by the entirety of the band. Just think about this. They can make people vibe to a spoken word instrumental. So that's already a testament to how good this band is. What separates Nothing More from so many other bands is the fact that they give their songs room to breathe. They don't just go lyric to lyric to lyric, verse, chorus, 230 max, that's over, because otherwise the streaming numbers are down. No, they really give their songs a special something. If your song needs a little extra instrumentation to work, or a little extra vocal harmony, a breakdown here, a solo there, a line that needs to be repeated 3 times with increasing instrumentation, they just do it. And that's what makes their songs so special. Nothing seems rushed or influenced by what other people or the industry wants from them. As always with Nothing More, you have a variety of themes that they explore throughout the duration of this record. It's never just surface level with them. This record feels angrier than ever and certainly deals with more negative topics. Not that that's anything that Nothing More have ever shied away from, but this album definitely puts those themes more in the center of the subject matter. Songs like The Other F and Stand in the Fire are prime examples for wanting to critique both sides of an argument, and more specifically the climate that the argument happens in, the societal climate, and really calling out both sides and the entirety of the situation. This is how you do it. Not like this. There's another prominent theme here with the meaning of spirits. Spirits obviously as alcohol, or spirits as, well, spirits, and that gives an interesting duality to the entirety of the record, giving us room to think about what it means to be ourselves, conflict within ourselves when a person is intoxicated versus when they're not intoxicated, but also different personalities, spirit types colliding and getting into conflict with each other and how that affects us as human beings. In the same vein, the album also talks about the image that we have of ourselves, the image that we portray to other people, the different types of spirits within oneself colliding in a song scene like Face It, where you battle with your inner demons and you come back out stronger because of it. That's all just perfectly mixed into one album, and there's another theme on here that is ever so subtle, but I feel the need to point it out. There's the theme of fire that they just sprinkled in, sometimes very subtly, sometimes not so subtle. If you look at the opener, Stand in the Fire, we have that very clearly, stand in the fire and become what you are. But then on the other F word, we have the bridges burning and the ice burning on that same track before we pick up the fire within ourselves on the song Face It, where we literally set ourselves on fire. You then have Dream With Me, where the opening is out of the fire, and finally on the title track, the closer, we have the smoke in my lungs, fire on my tongue. And yes, some of you might say, well, that's just a coincidence, people write about fire all the time, but Nothing More is one of those bands that pay so much attention to detail that I really cannot imagine that this is a coincidence. Lyrically, all these themes are encapsulated really well and on the high level that we are used to by Nothing More at this point. As with the two previous records, we have excerpts from Alan Watts in the form of interludes, Spirits on Neverland and Ships in the Night, again talking about our meaning, the universe, and so much more. I am again impressed by how seamless they are able to include these spoken word parts into the flow of the album. There's really no other band that has ever pulled it off this well on 3 consecutive records. There is of course Exist by Avenged Sevenfold that kind of falls into that same lane, but on 3 consecutive records with the same excerpts from the same person, that's really unique to Nothing More, and it's incredibly well done here as well. There's a cut that I find myself struggling with though, and that's Deja Vu, which especially in the first half has this very repetitive performance, and I feel like it would work significantly better if the instrumentation was stripped back a little and Johnny's vocals were a bit more front and center, like you would see in a Bad Flower song like Family, for example. It all seems worth it though when we then go into this prog rocky bridge with the solo and the explosion, the driving drums are there, and it sounds really amazing. But then we go back into that repetitive chorus without having changed anything, and I at least would have wished that they would have ended it with the prog rocky solo, because that really seems like the climax of the song. We don't need to go back to that repetitive part of Deja Vu again. Now, as I approach the rating, I have to put the disclaimer out here that due to Nothing More being a band that always puts out these layered records, this might very well change in the coming days, weeks, or months. But after listening to the album a good couple of times in the last couple of days, and then also re-listening to their self-titled album, To the Stories We Tell Ourselves, I do not feel that Spirits catches the same lightning in a bottle moment that those 2 albums did. It might just be the familiarity that I have with those other 2 records, and if you ask me in a year, all 3 of them are 10 out of 10s for me. It might also be the mix and production, because the vocals that were front and center on their last album have gone a little bit back in the mix, and they were front and center for a good reason on their last album. And this entire album sounds a tad bit too polished when you compare it to the last 2 entries in their discography. I still think this is an incredible album though, and an insane level of quality that they have now upheld for almost 10 years. So kudos to them. I'm feeling a strong 9 out of 10 for this album, Spirit. Watch out for an updated take though on my year-end best albums of the year list that's gonna come out at some point in December, because Spirits is definitely among the best albums of the year, just like these 2 albums.